exactly.
What's it been like working with Will? I mean, I assume you run into him backstage and
Oh
things
yeah, of
like that.
course. We drive to gigs together, and you know, I've organised a gig, for example, in Bathurst that we went and did together. Uh, what's it like? Well, it's fine. He's an entertaining guy. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. We do a lot of shop talk, of course.
Yep.
Comedians love to bang on about comedy, and to the point where you might think that it would sound interesting to listen to two comedians talk specifics about comedy, but when it's all we do for hours and hours, it starts to get dull for other people.
Mm.
But yeah, bang on about comedy, and I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. Really, I'll tell you what. I mean, working with him, I don't, I suppose, lust after the fame as I might once have done.
Mm.
For fame in stand up, because I mean, you sort of stand. You look over the shoulders of these well known acts and sort of see how people recognize them everywhere they go and stuff like that. And I maybe once found that appealing, but I guess now knowing quite a few well-known personalities, I don't know if I find it very appealing anymore. They're sort of welcome to it. Not that it's my choice to make, but you know. So that's sort of educational, I
Mm.
suppose, personal way. Yeah.
Your website lists a number of live appearances recently and one coming up, I believe.
Does it? I'm probably shockingly out of date on my website. I've got to update that thing. What was the one coming up? The Comedy Store, probably.
Yes.
Sydney Comedy Store. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll be there in early September.
Mm.
Yeah. hmm
You've written for TV and for plays.
Yes, I have.
What's that like and what's the difference between the two?
Um, well, television is very format driven, obviously,
Mm.
and I've been writing for for specific shows. So you certainly have to write within the framework of the show and in the tone of the show.
So name
Um,
names, what shows?
I've worked for Rove. I worked for Charlie Pickering and Michael Chamberlain on a vehicle called The Mansion, which was a little seen and not very successful Comedy Channel project. Uh, and what else have I done? Ronnie John's Half Hour, Big Bite. Um, a couple of sketch shows. Most recently, I worked for a kids sketch show on ABC 3, which was called You're Skidding Me in the End. That was an interesting one. That was sketches starring children and for children. So obviously that, is restrictive in certain senses. Whereas with a play, to answer your question, is very you're very free. That's just something I'll sit down and write. And I'll write about whatever. I mean, I haven't done heaps and heaps of plays, but I have finished one recently, which is not yet in production. I'm trying to work out how to get it there, but it's a musical about cats, and uh, and I'm not kidding. It is a musical about cats, and um, I just felt there weren't enough of them, and that it was time for another one, and so I wrote one, but it has yet to see the light of day. I mean, they're challenging to get up and going and get all the pieces together. With a TV show, it's fine. You're just paid to do a job. There you go. There's the script. Whereas with a play, it's a bit more grassroots, and you got to sort of get things happening yourself, or nothing will ever happen.
So you've actually taken your plays to the stage yourself.
Yeah. Well, my first one, it was done sort of as a internship for uni. Really, I was able to get my hands on a theatre that I used to work at as a teenager, and was a board member on, a youth board member on, when I was 16. And the space was sort of just sitting there disused over Christmas, and they allowed me to take it on. And so I called it my internship and put on The Great Library of Earth, it's called, um, which I, produced and directed. But I mean, I much prefer to not have to do either of those things. I much prefer to just, I've got a couple of friends who are very much in the business of theatre, and I write for them to then take the stuff and go away and make it happen. And my second play was written specifically at someone's behest. That they'd had the idea for the story, and I just wrote the script, and then they took it away and did all the work and all the production, which is good because it was a very busy musical with lots of characters, and it would have been a nightmare to deal with. Um, so I much prefer to give those jobs to other people. I like to write.
Well, this is good.
Yeah,
You've written quite a few books, both for children and adults.
yeah, nine books,
Wow.
but
Well,
who's counting?
would you like to share like a bit about each of the different series and the standalones?
Sure. The first one was written for children who were beginning to read for themselves. It's called Sir Joshua and the Unprofessional Dragon, about a dragon who's quite a pacifist and doesn't want to fight. And the knight, of course, wants to kill him. So it's a bit of a reverse on the old battle between knight and dragon. Uh, yeah, and that one did pretty well. It's out of print now. The second one was a book written for people learning English as a second language that used a very limited vocabulary from a list of words. I think it was about 5,000 words that I was allowed to use. So it was a story. It wasn't just an exercise book, but it was fairly limited in what I could achieve. It was also written for a company that my mum was the publisher at, so, so I don't know if it necessarily got through on merit, that one. But then the Zoo of Magical and Mythological Creatures was probably the next one, I think. And that's a kid's book again, kid's novel, which uses real myths and uses sort of beasts from, actual mythology who were all kept in a zoo. And of course, bad things happen in a Jurassic Parky kind of way. And then there was the Broken World trilogy, which was my one for adults, fantasy for adults, which was a really long process to get that up and going. I think it took me 7 years to find someone to publish that, and many rewrites. And so that's the big main one really. Uh, I missed something out. Well, Sam the Cat is, my latest kids one. That's based on that story of how I was named after the cat, but it's told from the cat's perspective, and the cat is obviously a bit miffed. This useless screaming baby has turned up and stolen away. So that's one of the kids. And then these next two, the latest, The Legacy of Lord Regret and Lord of Lies, which is the Strange Threads duology, which I had not heard of the duology before, but I'm assured that it's a real thing. Uh, and they're about to come out. So that's 8 and 9. I might have missed something, I'm not sure.
In The Legacy of Lord Regret, you begin with very black and white characters. You've got the Warden of Justice and the Warden who blesses versus the Warden who tortures people and the Warden who
Yep.
rapes women. What do you plan to achieve with these characters?